It's kind of like Christmas, I suppose, in a weird way. But here we go, brand new motor, still in the box. You can see the wires. This is the same wiring that you saw down here with the old one. And so that's a good sign, right? And here is the actual motor itself. And what we can do again is read to confirm that these are the right specs. You know, the beauty of OEM, and I'm not a sales guy at all, I'm just a homeowner like you, but you get the exact same thing, right? So we already know we've got the wiring to match. We can see here that it is a 1075 RPM. It's 60 Hertz. It's a 1.7 amp. It's single phase, and of course it's a 1/3 horsepower. Yay. So this will be perfect and will be exactly what we use to replace the old one. So what happened is this broke off because I skipped a step and didn't use the liquid wrench or the oil to penetrate this, and you can see that's not supposed to be like that. That thread actually broke off, and that's a bad thing. It's supposed to look like this with no thread in there. So what I did is use the penetrating oil, yes, and then I just used my pair of pliers here, held it in with the pliers, and then used the wrench, and that's what's getting this off. So lesson learned, go ahead and use your penetrating oil. Don't do what I did. Okay, so now it's time. We're going to take this piece off and reuse it, and what we're going to do is just thread these new wires here through this little tube that keeps the sun and the rain off the wires as they're transitioning here to go to where the motor is. And I forgot to mention we'll be using this plate as well. That fell off as I was taking the motor off, but we'll talk about that in a second. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just going to take this off and then use this on the new wiring over here. Alright, so just go ahead and get this wiring off of here. So let's undo this cable tie, take that off, slide this through here. One at a time, there we go. And now I'm going to reuse this. And here's the old motor, ready to go and be recycled somewhere. Alright, so next stop, let's go ahead and put this wiring through this tube, the protective tube. There we go. Okay, great. And so next stop, we want to put this plate back on, and then we are going to screw the new motor back into these 4 screw hole positions. So that's next. Okay, so this protective plate, by the way, has a bit of a ledge, and so you can see this also has a ledge. And so the idea is this plate is just going to go on here thusly, and you can see where the holes will line up. And so I will put that on there while I go ahead and put the motor through here. So let's grab this motor, making sure the wires are facing the hole. Go ahead and slip that on. There we go. And again, kind of a two-hand job. What you're going to want to do, actually I'm going to turn this like this. There we go. And now these wires are going to be facing this hole, right? So, and then we have our protective cover for the wires thusly. All right, so that's how it's going to go together. And then what we're going to do is pull this down and go ahead and pass these wires through here right now. So let me set this motor down a second, and let's get these wires, and we're going to put them through the hole. There we go. And then bring the motor up, we go. It's going to slip through this hole here. And this is going to go on like that. And then our 4 threads go in like that. So there we go. We've got the cover back on, and we have the cover back on, and we have the wires with the protector going through, which will then go back down into the unit. So this is now ready for us to go ahead and screw the motor back on using these 4 screws. Alright, so we have this in position, so now it's just a matter of going ahead and putting these caps back on. There's 1. 2. 3. And number 4. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is, just like in your car, you know how you torque down the nuts of your wheel when you're putting your new wheel and tire back on? We're going to do the same thing. We're going to go ahead and torque these down, each one kind of in a crisscross pattern, to make sure that it's nice and tight and snug and nice and even on all sides, because what we don't want to have is a lopsided motor. It makes the fan be lopsided, and obviously that's not a good thing. So here we go, just tightening these down. And of course, you don't want to break these off, right? We already saw what happens when you over tighten, so gotta be careful with these. Snug them down good, but don't break them. It's pretty tight. 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 Alright, it's on. So next step is put the fan back on. Just a quick inspection. I want to make sure that this protective cover is nice and tight, and it is. It's going in all the way to here. It's good, so that will protect it. Wires are coming out where they're supposed to be, which is awesome. So now we grab the fan, and we're going to put the blades back on. And what you will see is where the nut is going to go, which is that hole right here, is going to need to align with the flat area. So if we look down, you can kind of get a sense that it's not a perfect circle, right? Our drive shaft actually has a flat side to it, and so we're going to make sure that when we mount this, it is mounted in such a way that these threads, where we're going to be putting our lock nut, are going to be in the flat part of this unit. Alright, so that's the next thing, is line these up. It's a two-hand job, so I'll go ahead and do that right now. So I'm kind of holding the fan. You can see it will go all the way down. Obviously we don't want to do that. If you recall, you remember where the other one was up about here. So this shaft was very flat all the way across here. And so that's what we're going to do. And again, I have this this hole lined up so we can go ahead and put that lock nut on. Two-hand job, so I'll do that right now. So I have the lock nut on. You can see it right here. And what I'm going to do is, again, lift this up, get it about flush where it was before, and then I'm going to lock this down with my wrench. So that's the next step. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've used my wrench to screw this as tight as I can. Don't want to strip it, of course, but make it nice and tight. You can see it's back to being flush with the surface. The lock nut is nice and tight, so we are ready to go with the rest of the installation. We have the fan blades back on, and now we just have to take it back to the unit and feed these wires through and then put the top back on. Alright, so here we are back at the unit, and we are ready to go to put this back on. We have the wires here where the control area is, and so it's just a matter of reversing the steps and mounting this back on there. Two-hand job, so I'll go ahead and put this back on now and then show you the rest of the process. Alright, I have the top temporarily back in place, just sort of resting on here. I haven't put any of the screws back, as you'll see. Importantly, you want to make sure that these wires are all going through this hole that was specially designed to allow the wires to not be crimped by the unit when you put it on. So you can see I fed them through that hole there. That will be important when we put the top down, and then I'll do that next, and then once that's safe and secured, we'll go ahead and rewire this. When putting the top on, you need to make sure that the safety fencing here is inside the top. You can see how it has to be inside. It's a little bit tricky to do because it wants to keep popping out. So I start by putting it in here, keeping it tight all the way around, and actually pulling it. You can see how you can pull it to make it nice and tight here, and then get the top on. It will make more sense if you have to do this, but that's basically how you get all of this snug and tight. And then again, you can see that we have the wires where they're supposed to be. They're not being crimped by the top here. They're coming through the hole as appropriate. So next up is wiring. So purple goes back to the capacitor, as we saw earlier. So black will go to black, as you remember. So we'll put that on right now. And then last but not least, orange is going to go back to where orange was, which is right here. And then we're going to screw the red on right there. So first things first, get the orange back in place. Go, and then we simply reattach the red back to where it goes. So now I'm going to use these cable ties to go ahead and lock all this stuff back down so that it's not potentially flying around in there and causing any damage. So one of the rare times where I actually use these for wires. I've used it for a lot of other things, but I'm actually using it for wires. So let's do that next. Alright, so I went ahead and took the excess, grouped it all together, and then put a tight cable tie on it. And so that will help protect all of these wires from potentially getting stuck in any of the switches here. So that's important. And with that, now we can go ahead and start reassembling this top back on with all of the various screws that came off the top. And then the last piece that we do will be to put the cover back on over here. So first off is these screws. Alright, so just finishing up putting the 4 screws on. This one here, this one right here, this one over here, and that one there. And then last but not least, this one here. So just tightening them down, not too much. Don't want to strip anything, but that's pretty tight like that. And really that's just designed to hold this protection in, this fence protection, to make sure that nothing hits here. So with those all nice and tight, we are ready to put our cover plate back on. So that is next. So just a last check, making sure that we've wired everything correctly. Black to black, orange and red to orange and red. Again, with this unit, yours may vary. For me, the purple on the capacitor, and then of course making sure that all of the wiring is where it's supposed to be, right here, so it's not being crimped. And so everything looks good, everything's tight. We're ready to go ahead and put this cover back on. So let's get this cover unit back in place and tighten down the screws and see if we can have air conditioning, which would be really nice. All right, just tightening the last screw here, making sure that all the screws are back in position. Yes, yes. Let's make sure this is tight. Yep, it's tight. That one. So we're all good. Next up is go ahead and put the power back on, go inside, turn the air conditioner on, and see if this bad boy starts running again. So that's next. Go ahead and slip our blade back in. We want it in the on position. On, off. So let's go to on. There we go. It is on. Next stop, turn it on inside and see if this starts. All right, and as you can see, we have fan. The fan is working, and so that has solved that problem quite nicely. And just make sure everything's tight in the work area, and you are good to go. So that is how you fix a bad fan motor on a Lennox air conditioner. And now I can go inside and enjoy some nice, cool air. Good luck with your repair.